I don't know if this is not like per se legal advice, but like if you're in that kind of interaction, do whatever you need to do to ground yourself and you know, use your gut, right? Who is this person in front of me? Some of these agents are clearly no clear disregard for the law, right? Yeah. Some of the local ICE officers, I think, are not happy about what they're having to do. You don't know who you're going to get these days. And so to figure out what the vibe is, prioritize your own safety. The safest route is, is to not talk, right? To say, I'm going to remain silent and I want to talk to an attorney. If you're a U.S. citizen, that's a good exception to that rule. So like I was saying, we kind of have these rules we talk about and know your rights. The first is don't trust, not because officers might individually be bad people, but because they can and often do legally lie to people to get information or to get them to move into a space where they can arrest them. So if you think that ICE is after you or friends and family and you don't want to help them, don't trust them. Don't talk to them. I'm going to remain silent and I want to talk to my attorney. There are exceptions in the immigration context. So perfect exception. If ICE detains you and they're arresting you and they're indicating they're arresting you because they think you're deportable, not for a crime, that's a good time to get patriotic, is what I always say, right? I'm a U.S. citizen. It's unfortunate that many citizens, probably it's a good idea to carry proof of citizenship with you if you have it. I mean, it's like breaks my heart to have to advise that, but it's kind of practical advice. So if you have a passport card, that's easy to carry in your wallet. I get nervous carrying my passport. I don't want to lose it. I think a copy of the face page of your passport is sufficient. If you're more responsible than me and you're good with your passport,
especially
you can carry that.
Your kids now, they have accent. Even if they were born here. I have a son, he's 14 years old and he's got this accent. I don't know where he gets it from, but he has his little Mexican accent.
Yeah.
And maybe because he loves Mexican music.
I love it.
And he's dark skinned. And it's so funny because my daughter, I was training them because I said, if ICE gets to stop me, this is what you guys are going to do. And then my daughter is like, well, more likely he's going to get stopped or he's going to, because he's dumb. But, even the kids that were born here, they're dark skinned, they have accent, and it's like they have to carry around their passports.
Yeah, it's awful. It's un-American. It should not be happening. It's heartbreaking that it is. Yes. But, that is a case where maybe you would want to say something. You don't have to, right? You do have the right to remain silent. And I recommend, if you choose to do that, saying it clearly, I'm going to remain silent and I want to talk to an attorney. And that's it. They shouldn't question you anymore. They might, but you do not have to answer any questions. If you have some other kind of immigration status, maybe you're not a U.S. citizen, but you have a green card, you have some other form of immigration status, I do advise, technically the law does require you to carry what's called proof of registration with you. So if you have your green card, you're legally required to carry it. If you're 18 or over, it's actually a federal misdemeanor not to, so you should be carrying that. And keep copies somewhere else that are safe and accessible for your emergency contacts. If you are detained, ICE might confiscate your documents, so you want to make sure you have copies somewhere else. But for people in those in between undocumented and U.S. citizen, right, typically if it was my client, I would typically advise they're going to be detained by ICE, saying what their status is, showing their status. ICE might ignore it, but now they've made a record that they are telling ICE, like, listen, actually, no, you can't deport me. And if ICE, or, they can't detain me. If ICE continues, then now I'm going to remain silent and I want to talk to my attorney. So there are some limited things you might want to say if you're being detained by ICE, but don't say too much, right? You can always say more later. It's best to do exactly what you've done, right? Which is like plan with your family what might happen in that moment. Think about how you're going to respond and what steps your family will take.
What about the house? What about if they come and knock my house? Are they allowed to get in my house without an order? Are they allowed? What is that process
Especially
there?
a few days ago, there was something on the news that said that I don't know who that now ICE is
And
allowed to
here,
get
Yeah.
into the
not too long ago, here in Portland, they just broke a door and
Yeah.
get inside, and
but
they claim
now
they were
in
looking
the
for somebody.
news
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
So
said that ICE was allowed to enter the house. And people are nervous because they're like, oh, now they don't need a judicial warrant to get into a house.
This is one of, yes. So, no, ICE, any law enforcement officer, they cannot enter a private space, and your home is the quintessential private space. So, they cannot enter your home without a judicial warrant signed by a judge or an exception to the warrant requirement. And the most common exception is consent. So, practically speaking, you should think about it as they are not legally allowed to enter your house unless they have a warrant signed by a judge or consent to enter. Now, starting in, I think for me, one of the inflection points was there was a apartment raid in Chicago where ICE officers or federal agents busted into an apartment building. They were dragging people out, and it was so clearly unlawful and in violation of the Fourth Amendment. This is the part of the Constitution where this right comes from, to be free from unreasonable searches or seizures. Seizure just means detention, arrest, and search includes like trying to search your person or trying to enter your home. So we did recently learn, and only through an ICE whistleblower, that ICE, at least starting in the summer, I believe, has been training new recruits and telling them that they only need an administrative warrant to enter someone's home. At least in the case, this particular internal memo was specific to people who have prior removal or deportation orders. But then there was a footnote that really made it clear that they plan to expand this, or that this rationale could be expanded to essentially anyone who's not a U.S. citizen. We think that they know that that's totally unlawful because of the skulky way they went about it. According to the ICE whistleblower, trainees were allowed to read the internal memo but not keep a copy. They couldn't take notes. This was not a memo that was publicized. And it wasn't publicized because it's so clearly unlawful. It's so clearly in violation of the Fourth Amendment that it's mind-blowing that any attorney would put their name on something like that. This is beyond a novel interpretation of the Fourth Amendment, in my opinion. It's just plain wrong. And I think unfortunately, we'll have to wait for the courts potentially to see what happens with that. But I mean, the short answer is they might act like they don't need a real warrant. They might use one of their little ICE warrants. They're called administrative warrants. They're basically, I mean, those are created by ICE, right? Not signed by anyone else. It's like, dear me, you can do whatever you want, signed me, right? Like that's essentially what an ICE warrant is, created by ICE. So they do not have any power of law outside of their own regulations and rules that they are supposed to be following. So yeah, I get really worked up over this.
the regular people, how can they prepare for that? How can they act if somebody get knock their homes and trying to say, hey, I'm biased and I have to get there?
Say loudly and clearly,
I do not
consent. You cannot enter my home. I do not consent. And then frankly, stand back. Don't be by the door because they might break down your door.
And record, because nowadays recording is a key.
It's true. I mean,
my
think
gosh.
of what the government could try to get away with if there weren't people out there
I mean, the two
filming.
people that just murder.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for all these people filming every angle.
And they immediately came in the media and start telling oh, they were terrorists. They were doing
So
this
this
and
is
that.
another kind of recent development or information that we're learning or figuring out is that it seems that some of the federal agents are working under the instruction or understanding that even just filming them constitutes impeding law enforcement. And impeding law enforcement is a federal felony, 18 U.S.C. 111, assaulting, impeding, etc., law enforcement. And if even a U.S. citizen commits a federal felony in ICE's presence, ICE can legally arrest that U.S. citizen, right, for that federal crime. It seems that this is the understanding they're working under and why they are claiming that you can't film, you're impeding, give me that. And then if they don't stop filming, they're arresting them. It's bogus. That is not impeding. You have a First Amendment right to film law enforcement as long as you're not actually impeding, right?
Yeah,
you do it from a safe distance. In Oregon, you do it openly, etc.
We have quite a few people in the community that follows them and record them and record live videos to advise the community here they're here, be aware of it. And recently I saw this girl, and she's always out and about, just to let the community know where they're at. And she went out of the country for a vacation, and when she came back, she said that her passport, there was a note in
A
her
flag.
a flag on her passport. I cannot remember the word she said that they told her.
Domestic
she-
terrorist.
Yeah, no, it
No.
was agitator.
Agitator, yes. And she
Oh
is
my
from here.
gosh.
She's an American.
Yeah.
She's Caucasian.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I guess that's the other part of this. Like, ICE agents or federal agents need to work in understanding that, right, that's impeding. And then we're seeing more instances, I don't know locally necessarily, of federal agents then filming. Well, we saw it with Renee Good, right?